Hey guys, welcome back to Mr. Kirk's class. It's been a while, but today we're going to be looking at voting and elections in Virginia, SOL 5E. Let's get to it. Before we actually go over voting in Virginia, I want to give you a brief history lesson of different voting legislation and constitutional amendments. The very first, the 15th Amendment, passed after the Civil War, gave African American men the right to vote. This year is actually the 150th anniversary of this very important amendment because no vote, no voice. Our second one is the 17th Amendment. It created the direct election of senators. Before this, senators were not directly elected by the people. So this was the idea that we're going to use the popular vote to determine our representation and who's going to create laws that are actually going to affect us. The next one you should have learned about in sixth grade in U.S. History 2. That's the 19th Amendment, passed right before the 1920s. It gave women the right to vote. They fought for this for many, many years. You probably remember Susan B. Anthony, who actually never got the right to vote because she passed away before the 19th Amendment was ratified. The 23rd Amendment, Washington, D.C. is now allowed to vote in presidential elections. See, Washington, D.C. was not a state, and you were not allowed to vote for the president in D.C. until the 23rd Amendment was passed. The 24th Amendment had to do with African American civil rights, and it outlawed poll taxes. They literally would make you pay to be able to vote. And part of this was to keep certain groups of people from voting, which is bad. Anyway, the next one is the 26th Amendment. This one will be so important to you all because it actually lowered the voting age to 18. This was passed in and around the Vietnam War. The idea is that if I'm old enough to fight and die, I'm old enough to vote. And I mean fight or die fighting a war for your country, like you were in the army or something. But anyway. The final one I want to talk about is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and it outlawed voting discrimination of African Americans. This is one of the big things that Martin Luther King Jr. was fighting for. All right, now let's get to actual aspects of voting in Virginia. First thing, voting is a basic responsibility of citizenship. You don't get in trouble if you don't vote. It's not a duty, but you should vote. Without voting for your representatives, you have no voice in our government. Only citizens who register and can participate in a primary or a general election. You have to register. We'll go over that in a little while. All right, so primary elections in Virginia are held in the spring, always, and they are selecting who's going to run in the general election. General elections, like voting for the president, those are held in the fall. The first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. You don't have to remember that. And you can vote for the person who may or may not take office. They determine by who gets the most votes. You can vote for any political party. And in Virginia, you don't have to be registered for a political party. You can be an independent, like Mr. Kirk. I'm not registered Republican or Democrat. All right, so there are 3 qualifications to vote in Virginia. One, must be a citizen of the United States. A legal citizen. 2, you have to be a resident of Virginia and precinct, which means you must have a address in that voting district. A precinct is a local voting district in a county or a city. You also must be 18 years old to be able to vote. Actually, you have to be 18, you have to register, you have to be a citizen of America, and you have to be a resident in the state of Virginia. But if you meet all that criteria, then you can vote. How to register. Now, if you don't get anything out of here, out of this presentation, this is so important. To register to vote in Virginia, you must do this in person in the registrar's office located in downtown Danville. You can do this at the Division of Motor Vehicles. You can do this when you get your driver's license. By the way, this is a mistake. It's not on Cleveland Street anymore. The DMV is actually on Piedmont over near Harbor Freight Tools. You can do this online or with a mail-in application. Or in person if you go to one of the other 2 things. All right, so registration. You must register 22 days before the election. You have to. Period. There's no other option.